Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today on this episode, we're going to be talking about a very classic soft plastic worm design. A worm design that really has withstood the test of time. A ton of fish have been caught on this particular design, and it's really spread out into a wide variety of different worm designs, but it really started as this. Something that we call a finesse worm, or some people call a trick worm, which is actually certain brands' rendition of this. But whatever you call it, a finesse worm is generally just a straight tail worm. Around 7 inches is kind of the classic profile. Essentially, it's a little bit wider towards the nose here. It kind of slenders down towards the tail until it gets to the tail, and it's a little bit more bulbous. Now, some companies have really perfected this design over the years and kind of just really accentuated some of the aspects of it. Like Z-Man came out with the SMH worms, which is essentially just kind of a perfected version of the original finesse worm. Really they do something very similar. And the reason why the SMH worms is kind of like a perfected version of it is because that narrowing towards the tail, before you get to the tail, is much more accentuated on the SMH worms, and then the tail is pretty bulbous. So it's very obvious, as opposed to this one where it's not a huge difference in the thickness between the tail and right before the tail. So anyways, we're getting off topic a little bit, but what I wanted to do in this video today is show you guys my favorite styles of rigging a finesse worm, some of the ways that I like to rig this bait, and then kind of talk about how I fish each different style of rigging, and beyond that, maybe we'll get into some core colors that you need to be throwing and things like that. So stay tuned, let's get to it. All right, guys, so the first rigging style that I like to use with my finesse worms is with a shaky head. Just a simple jig head like this. There's a lot of different shaky heads on the market, very eclectic mix of designs out there, but one of my favorites is just the classic ball head style jig. And the reason why a ball head style jig head is so good is because I'm primarily fishing a shaky head. No matter what worm I'm throwing on a shaky head, I'm fishing it on generally a very clean bottom. Hard bottom, clean bottom, that is the key. And a ball head style jig head does a couple things. The first thing it does is it doesn't have any sharp angles on it. So there's nothing for this to really catch on the rocks. It will actually, as I'm dragging it, it rolls over them very well. That's just a very good design to drag over, a hard bottom and not really snag on anything. And also a ball head style really does tend to, present the worm so it's kind of sticking with its tail up. And this is actually a big key to the reason why I like to use the Z-Man version of a finesse worm, is because Z-Man baits are made of Elastec, and Elastec is super buoyant on top of other things like durability. It's very buoyant, so it naturally wants to stick up. So even when this bait is on the bottom and resting and standing still, it's still kind of floating and maybe moving around with the currents underwater. So very, very natural. It's something that just, a bait that just tantalizingly lifts up in front of the face of a bass, I think is always a big deal. But essentially what we're going to do, I'm going to show you how to rig the shaky head real quick. We're just going to go in through the nose, and we're going to come down through the flat part on the bottom. I'm only going to go about 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/4 of an inch. I think that's about 1/4 of an inch. And then we're going to bring it over this collar. This is a Z-Man jig head. I actually think this one's discontinued. This is the just the shaky head that they made, and I've got a bunch of them. I absolutely love it. But essentially we're going to turn it around like that, so so the collar is kind of catching, or this keeper is catching that that little bit of the worm that we inserted the hook through, and that's going to keep that there. That's why they call it a keeper. And then we're going to insert the hook point through the plastic in the biggest key. With ElaZtech, you just want to insert it into the center of the bait. You know, this is such a soft material that even if the hook point is in the dead center of the bait, you're going to still get a good hook set. You're going to get that hook penetration when you set the hook. With traditional plastics, a lot of time you want to Texpose it. So we'll bring it out and then just dig the hook point into the traditional plastics, you know, just a little bit, because traditional plastics much more dense and a lot of times very difficult to get the hook point through if it's like just in the dead center. So that's essentially how I like to rig a shaky head, is kind of like in a Texas style, weedless style. And yeah, very simple. Usually I'm going to be fishing this on spinning gear. I'm going to be using, you know, probably 10 or 12 pound test Seaguar Gold Label fluorocarbon as my leader. Usually use like a 15-foot leader or something like that. And then I tie it to a 20 pound test braided main line of Seaguar Smackdown. Now, sometimes I go down to 15. I'm actually getting more likely to go to 15 pound test as my main line size. So any one of those, but I really like having a main line of braid. So that is that right there. And the shaky head, I'm going to be fishing again on clean bottom, hard bottom, shell beds, ledges, long tapering points, rock piles, things like that. It's really good. It can be fished in a lot of different situations, but those are kind of the things that I like to do. And I did a really good video on fishing a shaky head recently. So I will put that in the description below, the link for that, and you guys can watch that and see all the ways to how to fish it. So that is the first way that I like to rig a finesse worm. All right, so the next way that I like to rig finesse worms is on a Wacky rig. Now, traditionally, a Wacky rig, my favorite bait overall is like a stick bait, something loaded with salt that sinks pretty fast, and you know, is just that stick bait profile, a little bit wider than a finesse worm. But there's sometimes when a finesse worm Wacky rigged is the deal. And so really a Wacky rig is very, very simple. You're going to be taking some sort of, you know, finesse hook like this. Usually I like to use a wide gap hook that is designed specifically for a Wacky rig. This right here is the WRM 201. Something in the 1/0 size is going to be perfect for a finesse worm like this. And essentially, you're going to just take your worm, and there's a smooth spot right here, this collar, and I like to kind of hook it in the back third and just go all the way through the back like that. And that essentially is a Wacky rig. And this is just a great way to catch fish up shallow. All right, so when I fish the exposed Wacky rig like this, you know, I'm generally fishing around very sparse or limited cover. You know, I'm not casting into cover, I'm casting around cover and expecting the fish come out. And this is a great way to catch fish in very, very clear water. And it's also one of my favorite techniques for the spring, when the fish are just, most of them are up shallow. And you know, I'm kind of omitting a lot of great ways to rig a Wacky rig. You know, there's a lot of great tools, a lot of rubber O-rings that you can put around here to increase the life of your bait. Now, if you're using the you know, finesse worms from Z-Man, the ElaZtech version, you really don't need that. The one thing I will say is, because this bait is so buoyant, the ElaZtech version isn't necessarily my favorite for the Wacky rig. It's my favorite for every other rigging style but the Wacky rig. And the reason for that is there's just not that much salt in this formulation for this finesse worms. And so it doesn't tend to float all that, or sink all that well. But you can use like a weighted Wacky rig hook, and it works very well for that, especially if you're fishing it on a weighted Wacky rig hook on the bottom. Core Tackle makes a killer little Wacky rig, you know, a hook that has a weight molded on, and it has a screw lock sinker on the bottom. Now, that is also going to be a little bit problematic with ElaZtech, just going to be a little bit tougher. But anyways, you know, there's a lot of different things that you can do to perfect your Wacky rig fishing, but the classic is just sticking that hook right through the middle. But I urge you to go look at some good Wacky rig videos. I've got plenty on the channel here to check out. Another hook that I think is very well suited for a you know, thin-bodied finesse worm like this, as opposed to a stick bait, is this hook right here. This is a hook from Hayabusa, okay, that has this little fluorocarbon keeper right here. All right, and this hook, it's pretty much the same as the 201 right here, but this one's called the 202, and it is a finesse Wacky rig hook that is designed to be rigged weedless. And so it's kind of like a Texas rig. So essentially we're gonna take it, we're gonna go further back on this deal. So back towards the back of the collar, and then bring it through. Okay, that fluorocarbon keeper is gonna keep the eye from pulling through, and then you're going to dig that hook point in. And essentially, there you are. You've got a Wacky rig bait that is completely weedless. It's a better solution than any of the brush guard versions, anything like that. But the problem is, like with a stick bait, it's too wide, and you're just not gonna have enough gap to get a good hook set with a traditional stick bait. But with a finesse worm like this, it's gonna be perfect. Again, the way that I fish the Wacky rig is you're casting around shallow cover, clear water. You can skip under docks, overhangs where fish are spawning, things like that. But it is primarily a shallow water technique if you're using a weightless hook version. So anyways, same tackle as the Shaky head in general. And all of the tackle that I'm talking about today, by the way, is going to be in the description below. And that is a great way to support the channel. Is if you're looking for a great way to support Sonar Fishing, use the links in the description below. A small percentage gets kicked back to the channel, and you get to buy the products. You know, no additional price or anything like that. So anyways, that is a Wacky rig. That is another great way to rig a finesse worm. All right, so the next way to fish a finesse worms is on a Texas rig. This is probably your best all-around, most versatile way to rig a finesse worm. It's a classic. If you're new to fishing and you're looking for a very basic technique to get you into fishing soft plastics, this is the deal. You know, the Texas rig is going to be the deal. You're going to take essentially a offset shank worm hook like this one right here. This is a worm hook from Hayabusa, offset shank, and you gotta. It's probably going to be about a 3/0 or 4/0 size, okay, for this style worm, and I think that a narrow gap design is better than like an EWG style offset shank hook. And all we're gonna do is we're going to go ahead and insert it through the nose like we did with the Shaky head, come back through the chin, about the same spot. You wanna go as far as the eye, this part of the hook is, okay? So the length of that's about a 1/4 inch from the base of this little kink here, the offset part of the shank, to the eye. That's where, as far as you want to go down the worm. And then you're going to turn that around so that offset shank is coming out through the chin there. And then you simply do the same thing we did with the Shaky head. You just insert the point into the center if you're using a Laztech, which is really good with a Texas rig. Or if it's traditional plastics, you got to Texpose it. You got to bring it out and then dig the hook point in. So anyways, this is the best way to rig your soft plastics or Laztech baits weedless, and it's a great way to fish a finesse worm like this. And essentially you're going to be fishing it with a sliding bullet sinker. You can also peg it to your line using a bobber stop or some type of rubber peg. And you're just essentially just going to put that on your line. You can use anywhere from, you know, really 10 to 15 pound test is going to be what you want to throw with this. You can use it on bait casting gear or spinning gear. Again, we've got links in the description below for both options. But essentially, you're just going to have this weight on the line, either stationary with a peg or free floating, And it's a great overall way to rig a finesse worm where you can fish it in cover, you can fish it in open water. It's not as good on clean bottoms as a shaky head, but it's also, you're also gonna have plenty of success with it. Like, you're not really gonna notice that big of a difference unless you're fishing like competitively. And really trying to fine tune things. But if you're just looking for something, if you're going to like a pond or something like that and fishing from shore, or you're just getting out for the day and you want something that's very versatile where you can just bring 1 or 2 rods, a Texas rig on a finesse worm is just a killer. So very good in all around different situations. All right, so the next way to rig a finesse worm is on a Nico rig. This is a really cool way of presenting a finesse worm or some other type of straight tail worm. There's a lot of different straight tail worms that you can use with a Nico rig, but a finesse worm like this, very classic design, is very good with a Nico rig. And essentially a Nico rig is kind of like it's like if you put a shaky head and a wacky rig together and they had a baby, it would be a Nico rig. So essentially you're taking your worm, and on the nose here, you're gonna insert some type of weight. Sometimes it's a nail weight. There's a lot of different Nico rig weights on the market. This right here is the Z-Man Nico Shrooms. And this, you just insert on the nose, kind of gotta work it in there with the Laztec because it's so durable. And I like to put, once I work it in there a little bit, I pull it back out, and then just put a little bit of super glue on the shank of the hook or the weight, and then put it back in there, and it's gonna stay in there all day. So essentially you got this nose weight here, and then you're gonna take your wacky rig hook, okay, and you're just gonna wacky rig this thing. And what I like to do is, instead of hooking it all the way through like I do with a traditional wacky rig like that, I like to take it on one side of the collar here, so the smooth part, and go in through from the bottom and go up towards the tail and just hook it like that. That's how I personally like to hook it. And essentially you are fishing this on the bottom. It's also a really good drop bait. And what I mean by that is when you cast it out there, especially if you're seeing them on like forward facing sonar or something, this bait will have this really nice glide and spiral all the way to the bottom, and it gets a lot of bites on the fall. So even though it's deadly on the bottom, on the fall, if you can get it around a fish's nose, they're gonna eat it. But once on the bottom, you're fishing it very similar to a wacky or a shaky head, but I really like to, it's something that you're working really slow. It's not something you wanna work in really windy conditions. It's like flat calm conditions like we have here today are perfect, because you just really wanna work it very gingerly and slow on the bottom. You know, maybe pull it a little bit, shake the rod tip slightly, and let it sit there. Just let it sit. You know, if you feel like you're in a good spot, let it sit, and then, you know, just really soft touch with a Nico rig. Okay, it's almost like fishing a drop shot. You're just being very, very finessey with it. All right, so that's essentially what it is. And sometimes what I like to do is, if I haven't got a bite in a while and I think that I'm around fish, I'll lift it up. You know, I'll lift this bait up and it'll kind of fold like this as it goes, and then it'll kind of glide back down to the bottom. So occasionally you want to do a lift. There's a lot of things that you can do with all of these different rigging styles. I'm just kind of giving you the very basic, you know, beginner ways that you might want to fish it, but Nico rig is another one. Anyways, guys, those are the ways that I rig my finesse worm. So let's talk about the colors that you really need to choose. If you're looking to start out with finesse worms, you need green pumpkin. Green pumpkin is going to be your all-around best color. Okay, it's not. I don't have one in the finesse worms today, but this is what that color looks like. This is the fatties from Z-Man. Black and blue is another one that you're going to want. Man, a chatterbait would have to be my favorite. Yeah. So I just got done, these guys stopped and we had a little chat, and I explained the power of a chatterbait, and then I looked down and look at this. Oh my goodness. You think it's hot out here? I'd be embarrassed, but I'm pretty sure everybody knows what I'm going through with this. But anyways, All right, so let's get back to the colors. So we talked about green pumpkin. So black and blue is going to be another really killer one. That's for dirtier water down in Florida, and really like summertime, like ledge fishing and things like that. Really good color. It's one of the two real basics. If you had to pick two, it would be black and blue and a green pumpkin. Another color that is really good with a finesse worm, especially in clear water, is watermelon red. That is a absolute killer in clear water around vegetation. And then the final one that I've got to put in here is just regular pumpkin. Okay, so if I'm fishing sand bottoms, this is a really good choice in those type of situations. Also in clay, you know, anytime you've got kind of more of a brownish red or tan bottom, pumpkin's a really good choice. But anyways, guys, hopefully this video helped you kind of break into the finesse worm category of bait for bass fishing. If you guys have any questions at all, please drop a comment below. And also, if you have a topic that you want me to do a video on in the near future, let me know what that topic is in the description below, or in the comment section below, or you can email me at sonar@sonarfishing.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. It means the world to me that I have a place to be able to continue, you know, working and providing value for sponsors on this channel while we're you know, going through everything here at St. Jude in Memphis, Tennessee. And so I just want to say thank you to all you viewers, and consider hitting that subscribe, like, and share button if you like this content. Thank you very much. I'm going to see you out on the water. Make sure you trust the process.